What decides who gets to speak? Truth or power? If you hold a gun and I hold a gun, we can talk about the law. If you hold a knife and I hold a knife, we can talk about rules. If you come empty-handed and I come empty-handed, we can talk about reason. But if you have a gun and I only have a knife, then the truth lies in your hands. If you have a gun and I have nothing, what you hold isn't just a weapon. It's my life. The concepts of law, rules, and morality only hold meaning when they are based on equality. The harsh truth of this world is that when money speaks, truth goes silent. And when power speaks, even money takes 3 steps back. Those who create the rules are often the first to break them. Rules are chains for the weak and tools for the strong. Here's a brutal fact. Over 70% of the world's population lives under some form of institutional inequality. These are systems where justice is not measured by what's right, but by who is strong enough to dictate what right means. Laws, rules, and morality. We like to believe they're objective, universal, sacred. But crack open the illusion and you'll find this. Power doesn't just enforce the rules. It writes them, edits them, breaks them, and then calls the fragments justice. And the real tragedy? Most people don't even question it anymore. We walk through life reciting borrowed definitions of fairness, never realizing they were handed to us by the very systems that profit from our belief in them. But you're different. You clicked this video because some part of you already feels it. Something isn't right. The world isn't shaped by truth, it's shaped by who can enforce their version of it. And if you leave now, these thoughts will still haunt you. The gap between what we believe and what we live. But if you stay, if you choose to keep listening, you won't just understand this world better. You might finally begin to see it clearly. Imagine this. 2 men walk into a room. One is carrying a gun, the other nothing. They speak. On the surface, it looks like a conversation. Words are exchanged, but underneath, the dynamic is anything but equal. The man without the weapon doesn't just lack firepower, he lacks real freedom. His tone is careful. His eyes scan for cues. His truth is filtered through survival. Because the reality is this. Truth doesn't live in words. It lives in the cost of being able to speak them. If you can stand unarmed and speak openly, then maybe, just maybe, you exist within the illusion of safety. But strip away the illusion, and truth becomes currency reserved for the powerful. Have you ever been in that metaphorical room? In a relationship, a job, a situation where speaking honestly felt dangerous, where someone else held all the power, and your words were reduced to diplomacy disguised as humility. That is not conversation. That's hierarchy. That's a system in play. And here's the core truth. The person with the weapon, not just a literal weapon, but money, connections, authority, leverage, determines the shape the truth can take. Because when power outweighs vulnerability, morality becomes flexible, and justice becomes optional. If you hold a gun and I hold a gun, now we can talk. Now suddenly dialogue is possible. Not because we respect each other, but because now you fear me as much as I fear you. But what does that say about justice if it only shows up when we're evenly matched? How real is morality if it only exists because of mutual threat? 2 children grow up on different sides of the same city. One has everything they need. Private tutors, secured gates, clean streets. The other grows up on hunger, making dinner out of expired cans and instinct. One is taught how to use the system to win. The other is taught how to survive long enough to get through that system without being broken. Years later, they stand before the same judge under the same rule of law. Society says they're equal now. Same laws, same rules, same consequences. But the law is a script, and some people got rehearsals while others got silence. So is it justice that punishes them the same? Or just performance? Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But even more terrifying is being forced to betray yourself completely just to stay alive in a system that doesn't recognize your humanity. This world is full of people clapping for systems that broke them, walking through hallway mirrors distorted by survival. And while those in power tell us to obey the rules, they're busy rewriting exceptions for themselves in back rooms we'll never see. Here is the cold truth we bury every day. Those who make the rules are often the first to break them. Rules are sold as structure, as protection. But for the weak, they're chains. For the strong, they're tools. Tools that can be bent, discarded, turned into weapons. And we absorb this message, sometimes quietly, subconsciously. We dress it in language. Phrases like follow the law or there's a right way to do things, even as we watch billionaires evade justice through loopholes, while the poor pay fines with their freedom. We say money talks to make it sound poetic, but what we really mean is that when money speaks, truth bows its head. And it doesn't stop there. When true power enters the room, even money gets down on its knees. There's always a louder voice, not the wisest, not the most just the one holding the hammer and controlling the silence. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the darker part of the human psyche that we suppress. But suppress doesn't mean gone. No, the shadow leaks. It infects the systems we create, the institutions we build. It becomes the tyrant disguised as savior, the leader cloaked in ideals but driven by insecurity. When a man has not faced his own capacity for harm, he will unconsciously mirror it onto others. He will dominate because domination feels safer than vulnerability. And on a societal scale, this isn't just psychology. It becomes policy. It becomes war. And it becomes history. Have you ever felt like no matter how good you are, no matter how hard you try, you're a few steps behind someone who didn't even have to try? Have you ever seen someone break every rule and still get rewarded by the same system that punished you for a single mistake? Why does nobody talk about this openly? Why do we pretend justice is blind when we know she peeks through the blindfold for people she recognizes? Why do we insist on the myth of merit when inheritance and power shape more than talent and effort ever could? Because it comforts us. It's less painful to believe in a lie that makes the world seem fair than to admit we live in a structure built to tilt in favor of the already powerful. But eventually, there comes a moment when the illusion cracks. When you see that morality is not written in stone but negotiated under the weight of force, that systems are not neutral. They are scaffolding built by the winners to maintain the view from the top. And here's the paradox. Most peace isn't peace at all. It's exhaustion. It's the absence of visible conflict, not the presence of real fairness. We sign peace treaties after rivers of blood. We reach negotiations only when destruction becomes mutual. Because the truth is, power only respects cost. You don't negotiate when someone's weak. You negotiate when they're strong enough to break something you care about. We like to believe that justice rises from morality, but more often it follows danger. And when justice is born from fear, is it still virtue or just self-preservation? That's the ugly question we don't like to ask. But we must, because when fear is the only thing preserving peace, then peace is a breath away from collapse. But the deepest war, Jung believed, is not out there in systems or governments. It's inside us. This is the war of the self against the self. And until we confront that, the part of us that seeks dominance, control, revenge, superiority, we will always recreate the same brutal dynamics we claim to despise. And here is the most painful truth. We've all, at some point, held the gun. Not literally, but we've used manipulation instead of honesty, withheld intimacy as punishment, dominated conversations to feel in control. We've used power not to connect, but to win. And we've also been on the other side, unarmed, vulnerable, watching someone else twist the rules in their favor. This duality lives in all of us, and only by facing it, by owning our shadow, can we begin to transcend the cycle. Because the cycle is this: those who are powerless suffer. They learn, they adapt, they rise. And when they inherit power, they often repeat the same patterns that once oppressed them. Because power without reflection is tyranny in new clothes. So what is power really? Strip away the pretense, and it's the ability to shape reality, to define the narrative, to tell a story loud enough, long enough that people forget it was a lie. Power is the authority to decide what becomes history, what becomes myth, and what becomes a forgotten body buried in silence. And we can either pretend this doesn't affect us, or we can confront the fact that the system isn't broken. It was built this way. But here's the real revolution. It does not start with rage. It starts with introspection. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, was the purpose of life. To strip down every mask, every system, every illusion, until what remains is truth. Truth not dictated by fear or gain, but by conscience. And that process begins when one person, just one, looks another in the eye and says, "I could dominate you. I could win. But I choose not to, because I remember what it felt like to be on the floor." That is where justice begins. Not in courts or governments, but in a decision. To be human when you could be a god. If you've made it this far, I want to know who truly understood the message. Leave the phrase "unseen power is unchecked power" in the comments, and let's see how many of you really grasp what it means to seek truth over dominance, to be powerful and still choose to be just. If this video made you question something, if it made you see things from a different angle, like and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, justice is not what the law allows. It's what the conscience can endure.